Good morning, grade 11, and welcome back to a new lecture, the distance learning about the same piece of poetry, Aunt Julia by Norma McCaig. In the previous sessions, we finished stanzas 1, 2, 3, 4 about the summary, and I told you some of the themes and also the message of this poem. Today, inshallah, I will finalize the summary of this poem with stanza 5 or with the 5th stanza. I hope you will gather the most important points to be written in the analytical essay. Just underline the most important points and also the figures of speech or some of the analytical figures of speech if you have today, because inshallah I will complete my sessions with the analytical essay, with the analysis of this poem in the following lectures. But before going through the summary, you will listen to stanza 5 once more. Listen, please.
Aunt Julia spoke Gaelic very loud and very fast. By the time I had learned a little, she lay silenced in the absolute black of a sandy grave at Luscantire. But I hear her still, welcoming me, with a seagull's voice across 100 yards of peat scrapes and lazy beds, and getting angry with so many questions unanswered.
As you see here that he's trying to remember, or he's remembering what was happening through the life of his Aunt Julia, and he misses everything about her life. Now he's very angry that she passed away without answering his questions, and I think he suffers from being blamed himself, or from blaming himself about this, the death of his aunt, because he mentioned a lot of things about her loud voice while speaking, but now there is a great silence. So I think he sees that it is his fault to silence her, or to silence her voice. Now I'm going to start the summary. With the final stanza opens by repeating the opening lines of the poem, so there is a motif here. Aunt Julia spoke Gaelic very loud and very fast. He's reminding the tone of her voice in her life. It was loud, but now there is a great silence after her death. However, a darker tone enters the poem at this point. By the time McCaig had learned a little Gaelic, his aunt was dead, lying silenced in her grave. So here he learned, or he started to learn some of the Gaelic language, but after the death of his aunt, so he feels the regret that he couldn't learn this Gaelic language in her life to be able to ask her the questions that he needed the answers for, and also to answer her questions. So there is a great regret here, because he said she is lying silenced in her grave. So there is a great regret here that he started to learn the Gaelic language after the death of his mother, or of his aunt. The contrast between the loud, talkative, vibrant Aunt Julia in life and the utter, absolute quiet of death is emphasized using enjambment to possession silenced at the opening of the line 5. The tone seems almost accusatory. Accusatory means that he is accusing himself of the silence of his aunt. He thinks that he is the reason for this silence, because he mentioned, or he got mentioning how loud was her voice in her life, as if blaming death for suffocating and stopping her voice. So he is blaming himself for this great silence, or maybe he was complaining of the loud voice. So now she's dead, and he's complaining himself for suffocating and stopping her voice. This sinister, unsettling tone continues to describing the absolute black of her grave. Yes, absolute black. How tough is this expression, black? unlike the comforting security of the absolute darkness, absolute black, absolute darkness. There is repetition, there is a pessimistic tone here of the box bed in the third stanza. The subtle shift from darkness to black conveys the frighteningly bleak void of death. So he is very frightened of death here, because you see the color here is black, and black goes to the pessimism, and also it changes from darkness in the third stanza. Darkness is somehow light black. Now it's totally black after the silence of his aunt and the death of her. Instead of sustaining this melancholic, the pain, maudlin tone, though, the speaker seems to challenge the finality of death in the line, but I hear her still welcoming me with a seagull's voice. So here there is a kind of optimism by saying that he can hear her calling him or welcoming him with a seagull's voice. So after being very pessimistic, he started to be optimistic again by remembering her voice calling him or welcoming him with a seagull's voice. She has left such a strong impression on him, he can still vividly imagine her calling to him in welcome. Her voice is loud, carrying across 100 yards, and shrill, like a seagull's piercing cry. Again, the metaphor used to connect her to the natural world, which played such a huge part in her life. The poem ends with the poet imagining her getting angry with so many questions unanswered. It's a very important part here, because he's reminding himself again, or he's using the metaphor again to connect his aunt to the natural world or to the nature around him, just like the seagull's voice, and comparing her to the nature, landscape, water, wind, air, things like that. But ending it with getting angry, it refers to his great regret and loneliness and isolation after the death of his aunt. The final word is left on a line of its own, serving to reinforce the speaker's enduring sense of frustration. He's frustrated, he's greatly frustrated, because she's dead now, and he knew how to speak a little Gaelic language, and she passed away, so he could not answer her questions or even get his questions answered, because she's now in grave. The ending of the poem is somewhat ambiguous, and it could be interpreted in a number of ways. The questions he alludes to could represent literally her questions to the boy, which he was unable to answer as he had no Gaelic, or they could represent all the questions he would have loved to ask but was unable to until it was too late. So he started to learn how to speak Gaelic language after it's too late, because she's dead and now he's a man. She used to ask him questions while he was a boy, but he couldn't answer her because he didn't know anything about the Gaelic language. Moving beyond the literal, the questions could represent the more universal queries we all have about the meaning and mysteries of life itself. The repetition of the word angry in these final three lines suggests Mackay is warning us to hold onto and cherish the culture and heritage of the island way of life. He is afraid if we allow it to die like Aunt Julia, then it too will be lost forever. Here is a great reference. I totally appreciate that he's asking the people not to kill the language or the Gaelic language. They should use it and try to speak it, not to lose it like his aunt. He wanted the language to be continuous, or to be continuing to live it up, or to make it exist, not to be dead like his aunt or his aunt. So this repetition of the word angry in the final three lines to suggest a warning to hold on to and cherish the culture and the heritage of the island way of life. So he wanted the cultures in the heritage, everything, and the language, everything about this island to be existed. So he wanted us not to ignore it, but to use it, to save it from the loss, from our loss, or from being lost like his aunt. Now we finished the summary of Aunt Julia by Norman McCaig, and I hope everything was sufficient and beneficial to you, and I hope you can underline or highlight the most important elements to be used in your analytical essay. Best of luck, and wait inshallah for the following sessions about the analysis. Thanks a million. Bye bye.